Right, 20 June 2020, and today I want to explain how Zimbabwe is on the verge of a leadership change within a very short space of time. Mnangagwa is going to step down, and I want you guys to understand the events that are going to come up before he steps down. But even more critical is going to be the steps or the events that come after he steps down. So in my view, Mnangagwa is going to step down peacefully and very easily. This is not going to be a problem at all because the conditions in the country are such that he can no longer be president. There is no solution in sight. So a number of players have already started to make sure that Mnangagwa steps down, and he's in a corner. As we speak, Mnangagwa is in a corner. He has lost control, not only of the guys in the military, but he has lost control of information. So information is flowing about himself, about his family, without his control. So that is a key state that we're in now, because you remember when Mugabe was in office, they tried to fight back through Grace Mugabe doing interface rallies. Mnangagwa is not able to do that. So the people that are going up against Mnangagwa are in control, in total control of the situation. And next week, there's going to be a test. And this test is the demonstrations that have been announced by the ZCTU. So the ZCTU is going to be starting national protests. So these are protests where people actually go out in the street and demonstrate. This is different from stairways and other forms of protest, because when you go on the street, there's only one outcome. You are demanding the resignation of a president. And they said it clearly. If you looked at the ZCTU press conference yesterday, they were very confident. They spoke directly to the army, to the soldiers. They also spoke to the region. So they appealed to SADC, AU, and the international community. So if these protests are allowed, there's only one outcome. And that outcome is the resignation of Mnangagwa. However, we know that the ZCTU, the opposition, they do not have power to protest in Zimbabwe. So if you see protests being allowed in Zimbabwe, it's because the military want them to happen. So there's no way a protest can happen in Zimbabwe if the military do not want that protest to happen. Last week, you saw that nurses were able to protest inside hospitals. So they were not allowed to go on the street, but they were allowed to protest within a confined space without being disturbed. So they could protest for a whole day. They did not just stay away from their workspaces. So normally, nurses would say, we're not coming to work. But this time, they were allowed to protest, which is to carry placards, to run around, and to make speeches. This is a clear indicator to me that there is a test going on. What happens? So how far can we push the military? This is the guys who are trying to see how far can we push the military. And this is also coming from the opposition. You saw that the group led by Nelson Chamisa was able to go and attack at Harvest House, and nothing happened. No one was arrested during that incident. And these are all tests. Unfortunately, the end result is not what many people expect. So after these protests, if the protests are allowed to happen, and Mnangagwa steps down, so let's say within the short space of time of between a month and 3 months, do not expect Nelson Chamisa to suddenly go into office to become the president of Zimbabwe. So this is where a lot of disappointment is going to happen, because I do not think the guys in the Zimbabwe military are willing to hand over power to the opposition. So we're still going to go through another stage where we have a different ZANU-PF person coming to take over. And as I said, this is a transition period. The issues that are driving people to go and protest are very clear. Salaries are very low. Cost of living is very high. So if you remove Mnangagwa, what is going to automatically happen if he steps down is that his deputy is going to take over. That means General Chiwenga is going to be your next president who's going to complete the term of Mnangagwa. So where we are going to another stage where a ZANU-PF person, a different ZANU-PF person is going to take over. But this is not a natural process. This is not because of the power of the opposition or the power of the unions. It is an internal factional fight that we are going to see resulting in a change of the person who is on top. And as I said last week, the current information that we are seeing about corruption, about COVID funds, it's factional fighting, which is going to be used to bring people into the street. So if you want to know how documents are flowing, any funds to do with COVID, the person who is in charge of the COVID funds task force is General Chiwenga. So any of the documents that have to do with coronavirus, the faction that is led by General Chiwenga is in charge of those documents. They know exactly what is happening with any of the procurement. That is why you see that it's easy to get documents about companies, about transactions. So you're seeing a factional fight that is going to be progressing, but they cannot openly challenge Mnangagwa or remove him from office. So people are still going to be used to remove Mnangagwa, but at the end of the day, you're going to end up with a government that is a ZANU-PF-led government with probably General Chiwenga on top, or someone that he nominates. That person is going to take over. This is where we're going now. Now, the question is, what happens after the departure of Mnangagwa? What is going to happen to the environment? Is the economy going to improve? Are things going to get better? And this is where I said within the next 6 months, there's going to be a GNU or an NTA. But still, that process is going to be led by probably General Chiwenga and a team from the military. So, although the departure of Mnangagwa is going to be very, very easy, you will see that when he steps down, it's going to be easy. There's not going to be much resistance, especially if the army allows people to demonstrate. The departure of Mnangagwa is going to be very, very easy. But the period after is going to be very disappointing to the opposition. They are going to finally find out that they've removed Mnangagwa, but the guys who are coming in are the same guys who are in charge now. So the army still has all the power. And remember, there's also a number of stakeholders, which is the Chinese. The Chinese are not going to allow the opposition to take over suddenly without any knowledge or any possible understanding of what is going to happen next. So they're probably going to support the military taking over, General Chiwenga being on top for at least the next 2.5 years. And I think we have talked about this in the past. The transitional period where we're going to now is going to have General Chiwenga on top because he's more friendly to the Chinese guys. So the stepping down of Mnangagwa, I'm predicting it within a very short space of time. As soon as the unions are allowed to demonstrate, if you see a town demonstration, at the moment you haven't seen any demonstrations in the cities. The moment you see demonstrations happening in the cities without any military involvement, without people being beaten up, especially during this time of coronavirus, you should know that the stepping down of Mnangagwa is very, very near. And then we're going to go through a period where the military is in charge before the elections. But don't expect Nelson Chamisa to take over and become the president after the demonstrations. That will not be allowed. So that period after the stepping down of Mnangagwa is very, very critical. Because if the demonstrators do not accept the coming in of General Chiwenga, then the military will have to act. So there's a potential for conflict, there's a potential for fighting afterwards if we don't have a unity government or a national transitional authority. Right, so this is my analysis. This is how I see the situation developing. $75 as a salary is just not acceptable. People are now talking of $500 US dollars. So that will be the minimum wage going forward. This is what the unions are looking at, $500 US dollars. So this is what is going to drive the protests. However, the people with the power are the military. If they allow demonstrations, Mnangagwa, very, very easy. You'll be able to step down. But the period after, very, very controversial, very unpredictable. You never know what is going to happen after Mnangagwa steps down. Will the opposition or the unions allow General Chiwenga to take over when they've done all the dirty work of removing Mnangagwa? So this is where the situation is. Very interesting weeks coming up as the unions have announced the protests, and already we saw that the nurses were allowed to protest. Right. Thank you very much for watching. If you're watching this on WhatsApp, send it to as many people as possible. If you're watching this on YouTube or Facebook, please like, comment, and share.